I did it. We are recording now. We are live at 10. Cool. Look at us on time. Okay, so I've got Vanessa and Diana and Teresa and Justin and Shelly, and I'm going to shut up for a second. So my voice in the distance, my radio voice over here.
Because we don't have to do anything.
Oh, and I guess I'm going to mute you guys too, so we don't have a lot of feedback. Okay. Cool.
With more than 10 years of experience in higher education as an administrator, leader, and faculty member, Erica Gillette has studied at, worked on, and visited hundreds of college campuses. Today, she's on a mission to change the way families approach applying to college. At Rockstar, students start with building their vision and goals, so they don't just get into college, they get into their dreams for the future. I'm Jane Benson. We're here today to answer your questions so you can stay focused on what really matters, your future.
What a voice.
Isn't that cool? See, it makes me feel so cool and relaxed now. I've got Ed McMahon and I've got Justin, my co-host. Justin's my co-host, and he's from, Justin, are you in San Diego this morning or Palm Springs?
San Diego today.
What a life. Okay, so that's me. I'm Erica. I'm the founder of Rockstar Academics. I left my academic position at a small college in Lake Tahoe about 4 years ago now, to be full-time helping students. And so I'm here today, and I'm going to answer all your questions the best I can. So I'm going to change the slide here. There are just a couple things. If you only take a couple things away, like let's say your internet cuts out or you have to run outside and walk the dog, there are a couple things I want to make sure that you take away. And so the first, I'm going to put the slide up here, and I just want to run through these things. So here are the three things. If these are my main points before we get into y'all's questions, I just want to make these 3 points for you. If you only take 3 things away in this super crazy time, these are the ones. Now, just as much as ever, honestly, I tell my students this. I've been telling this for 4, 5, 10, 15 years that I've been working with students. The most important thing to remember is to talk about what matters most and to get clear about what matters most. So that's true whether we're talking about college admissions or we're talking about final exams or we're talking about anything else. Talk about what matters most in your families. If you stay true to that, you'll be fine in this process. And the second one is, no matter what happens, let's be honest, everything about education has changed. It's changed because of the coronavirus and because of what's happening today, but also education is in massive flux anyway. And so it's gonna change. And so the most important thing to keep in mind about your choices in college education are that college prepares students to have better lives. The numbers don't lie. Over and over and over again, statistics show college graduates, they have easier lives, they make more money, they have better health, they live longer, all kinds of things like that prove that it's still worth it. Even though there's a lot of uncertainty, it's still out there as a best choice for many, many people. So I wanted you to keep those 2 things in mind. Talk about what matters most, and the rest will come, the rest will fall into place. Keep in mind that college is a great choice. And then finally, this is something that I use in all my coaching, no matter what the question is. The honest truth is, the future's coming. It's coming. It's not going to wait for us. It's still coming. It's going to be different. We have no idea what it holds, but it is still on the way to us. And for your students, for Vanessa here, Vanessa, I want to know in the chat, are you a junior, a sophomore, a senior, where you are in school? But it's still coming. Junior year is still coming. Senior year is still coming. And so you don't have to be sure about everything, but you do have to make choices. They're still coming even when you're not sure. And so my goal, my mission is to give you all the tools so that you can make great decisions even though you're not sure. And I'm going to tell a story in a second to make that clear. So if any of that rings true for you, I want to make sure that you guys know how to give us feedback. So find the chat. Here I am checking on the door over here. Find the chat. Let us know what's on your mind. Now, see if I can make it stop making all that noise. That's terrible. All right. Okay, so I want to tell a story about this. You don't have to be sure, but you do have to choose. This is one of the most important things that that I tell students, I see it change the look on their face all the time. So what I mean by this is that there's this really important concept of understanding the difference between clarity and certainty. So we all want certainty. Humans want certainty. We want so much to know what's going to happen, what's the right decision, where should we go, all these things. We really never have enough information to be completely certain. We just don't. Things change. Even what we think we're certain about, it changes, but we do have the ability to have clarity. And that's a really important concept. So I want to tell a story about a friend. Let me tell you about my student, Ryan. So Ryan called me. It's the student that I'm working with this year. He applied to West Point. He's gotten into, I think he's gotten into every single school that he applied for. He's got almost $300,000 in scholarships on his plate. So he's got fantastic options. And Ryan's pretty sure that he wants to be an engineer. We've been working on it all year. He's pretty sure. He told me about a month ago, on a scale of 1 to 5, he was like a 4 in terms of being sure about engineering, right? So I talked to him the other day, and Ryan says, well, I think maybe I should just go to community college because I'm not completely sure about this engineering thing. So I'm on the phone with Ryan. I don't have all these wonderful cameras. He can't see my face. This is really important, to be able to see each other's faces. He can't see my face. I can't see his, and I don't have a screen to share with him, right? So I say to Ryan, look, I want you to get out a piece of paper, okay? And I want you to get out a pen, and I want you to put 2 dots on your paper. So I'm going to put the dots on here on this slide, okay? I want you to put 2 dots on a piece of paper. Oh, hang on. I'm going to make it so it'll let me draw. Hang on. You guys hang in there with me, okay? Well, maybe I'm not. Oh, it's going to be just like with Ryan. So I want you guys to imagine you're going to put your dot on the piece of paper, and I'm going to try one more time. Hold on. What if I do this? Okay. Gosh. Really, I know how to do this. All right. Forget it. So you're going to put your 2 dots on a piece of paper, right? One way over here on this side and one way over there on the other side, okay? And I want you to take your pencil and imagine, oh, look, here's how I'll do it. I told you all this is going to be casual. All right. So Ryan, I want you to put 2 dots on a piece of paper. This is my major takeaway for you guys today. You don't have to be sure, but you do have to choose. And this is how I showed Ryan the other day. So put 2 dots on a piece of paper. Now, Ryan, I want you to take your pencil and I want you to draw like a spaghetti bowl line all around, going from dot number 1 to dot number 2. Got it? So this over here is where you want to be in 5 years, even though you didn't know it. So we have a couple choices, right? We can just wander aimlessly from where we are, and eventually we'll find out where we need to be, right? But here's the problem. If you don't know where you're going, any way will get you there. All the roads look the same, right? So remember, I can't see Ryan's paper and he can't see my face. So I said, now Ryan, I want you to take your pencil and I want you to put a 3rd dot over there, closer to the last one than to the first one. Just put a 3rd dot. Now, this time I want you to put your pencil back on that first dot and I want you to draw a straight line to the new dot. Just draw a straight line right on over there. Okay? Can't see it. It's supposed to be red. Yeah. So if you go straight from where you are to the wrong place, you've learned a lot on the way. And you've probably figured out where the right place is, or you've got a lot more information about where the right place is from this journey. But instead of wandering aimlessly, you went straight for something. So now take your pencil and draw a straight line from that new dot to the right dot at the end. Okay. So I can't see Ryan's paper and he can't see mine. So Ryan, look down at your paper and tell me which journey was longer. So this is my main point. Actually, I think the 3rd point is the most important point, and it's my main point. You don't have to be sure where you're going, but you do have to make a choice. And if you head straight for something and you discover you're not right, not exactly there, and then you have to change your plan, you're in better shape. So that's my lesson. My overall lesson for the day is that things are going to change like crazy over the next 18 months. They're already changing. Everything about education is changing so fast we can hardly keep up with it. And now coronavirus is here. So the most important thing that you can do, Vanessa, the most important thing that you can do, Diana, for Vanessa is to help her make a plan and help her be ready to change it when everything changes. So that's how I want to answer questions for you guys today. And it's basically the most important lesson I want to share. So now I'm actually going to open it up and let you guys put some questions into the chat and open the conversation. Do I have?
Hey, it's Justin. If you guys feel like you want to speak, go ahead and you can raise your hand or just say in the chat and I can open up your mic. But I think if you want to, probably chat's easier altogether. But go ahead, and we have some questions there already, Erica, if you want to jump in there.
Yeah, I do. Okay, so Vanessa's a junior. Erin, you're a junior too. Fantastic. Okay, so I do have a couple questions. I have one right now from Shelly in Seattle. And Shelly asks, if people can start the admission process in August 1st, what is the deadline for when you should apply in order to be considered early admission? Okay, that's actually a great question. I want to talk more about early admission in a few minutes, but I'll answer Shelly's question right away. So Shelly, early admission deadlines are specific. They're not general. And so each school has a different one. If you're going to apply early decision, right, we're going to apply early decision to a school, you need to find out what that specific school's deadline is for early decision. And actually, not all schools will do early decision or early action. So let me quickly explain early action and early decision. And then I'm going to come back to talking about deadlines and delays and things like that related to coronavirus in a second as well. So early decision is where you choose a school that maybe it's your absolute favorite school. You absolutely know for sure that if Vanderbilt gives you an offer and admits you wouldn't ever consider going anywhere else. You would go to Vanderbilt no matter what. That would be your choice. And so you can tell Vanderbilt by applying in the early decision process, you can say, basically, hey, Vanderbilt, if you invite me to prom, I promise I'll say yes. And I use this metaphor all the time with students because it really is a lot like that. And I'll talk a little bit about the economics of enrollment and why that makes sense in a second if we have time. But colleges, they really want you to come there, right? It is their business, and they're looking for students who are going to be really happy at their school. So if you tell them, hey, you're my first choice, and you do it in this process that's called early decision, then you'll get an answer earlier. So Shelly has a follow-up to Shelly's question. Teresa says, if early decision is August 1st to November 1st, does it matter where? No, it does matter a lot. So early decision is a specific deadline at a school. And I can actually put a link. I can't put a link in the chat because I'll have to go find it, but I'll send this link. I'll add this link to the resources. I have a resources list, a frequently asked questions list. It's prepared, and I'm going to send it to you guys after the webinar. So I'll put some stuff about early decision in there. So each school has a couple of deadlines if they have more than one. So a private school, private college or university are more likely to have all these different kinds of deadlines. A big state school often just has what's called rolling admission. Rolling admission is just you apply and they process your application and say yes or no. And they do that throughout the season, either until their very, very late rolling admission deadline is over in July or August, or maybe they have open enrollment deadlines, and you can apply until they run out of seats theoretically. So big state schools often have rolling admission deadlines, but a lot of schools, even schools that have rolling admissions deadlines, they'll also have one of these early action or early admission or early decision deadlines as well. So private schools, all the Ivy Leagues have early decision, but many other schools do it as well. That early decision deadline might be November 1st. and it will be specifically November 1st. So it's a deadline, just like any other deadline. If you're going to apply early decision, you have to indicate that on your application, and you have to send the application in by November 1st or November 15th or December 1st or whatever that specific school's deadline is. That makes sense. So
Erica, I know I have a kid who is a junior too, and you and I have been talking about this, and we're kind of business partners in this, but I've been walking through those pieces. Now, you said one of the things that goes with early decisions is you actually have to make a contractual agreement. You sign something saying you're going to go. Is that right?
yeah, let me answer. Actually, that's a great comment. Thank you, Justin. And I won't go into too many more specifics after this because I know we've got lots of questions, but Shelly and Teresa, we can schedule some time. I'm going to put a link up in a minute so that we can schedule a one-on-one conversation to go into this great detail. So Justin just made a really great point, which is actually the most important point about early decision, is that if you apply and you check the box, this is an early decision application, and you get it in by that early decision application, it means a couple of really important things. It means if Vanderbilt, for example, admits you in early decision, you're committed. You have to go to Vanderbilt. Even if you applied to Harvard and Harvard called you and said, not only are we giving you a free ride to Harvard, but we're going to give you $1,000 a year travel stipend. It doesn't happen very often. Doesn't matter what happens, you're committed to going to that school. So early decision is really only a good option for a student who has a couple things in place. A, they would go to that school no matter what, no matter who else invited them. They would still go to that school. And B, and this is really important, if you apply early decision, your financial aid offer is very likely going to be different than if you apply regular decision. A, you've told the school that you really want it bad, which might help you get admitted, but it also might mean you get a little bit smaller scholarship or aid package. And B, they haven't made all their other financial aid and scholarship decisions yet. They haven't seen the rest of the application pool, so they're not prepared to make a complete offer. So it does give you a better chance of getting into a school where you might be on the cusp. Let's say that your test scores were sort of at the bottom of the bracket, but you're still in the bracket. They're at the bottom of the bracket, and it was maybe an iffy whether you would get in or not, and you apply early decision. Schools, especially the Ivies, you may have up to a 20%, 25% chance, a better chance of getting into that school in early decision. So it depends on the school. There's a list. It will tell you the odds are different for students who apply early decision, and tell you exactly what the odds are. For example, at Yale, the odds are much, much higher, let's say. Some schools, the odds are not better at all. Some schools don't even have early decision. So for each school, it's really an equation that you have to figure out the algebra of for your family and for your scores and that particular school's statistics. So you've got to look at it all.
Thanks, Erica. I was just going to say, that actually answered Diana's question, this last one, which is, if she applies, does that mean they give her a bigger chance of getting to school? And I think what you showed me before, you have a really good resource showing you the statistics of early decision versus the statistics if you apply later on in the fall and winter, right?
Yeah, good. Well, I'm glad I answered the question. It's a little bit complicated. The truth is, it's not complex, but sometimes the details can be complicated. And so the best thing to do is really look at each school's situation specifically.
We got a little bit of a question. We're going to pivot here. The question here is, I was really asking about early action. Does it matter where within the application window you submit? Is August better than late October, or just as important to that you make their deadline?
So in general,
from Teresa, she's got a couple of good questions.
Teresa, you have good questions. You just keep them coming, girl. Okay, so in general, the earlier you apply, the better. So if you've got a window versus a deadline, be the person who didn't send in that application at 11:30 p.m. the night before it's due. It really does matter. It doesn't matter every single school. It doesn't matter in every situation, but it never hurts, right? So always August is better than October. There are reasons why you wouldn't apply in August. such as you need to take a test again, such as you're waiting for results about AP scores, such as all kinds of reasons why you might not apply in August. And it definitely does depend on a student's transcript, a student's specific situation. But all things being equal, applying earlier is better than applying later. And you said it perfectly there, Teresa. I see your comment. It's important that you make their deadline. That's the most important thing of all. So it's important to understand what the deadline is and at least make it, if not get there way ahead of the deadline. So that's gonna, I wanna move on to the next question. Do we have another question in the window? Because I have a couple questions I expected folks to ask that I can talk through. Let's see, what do we got?
Coming up there, just a quick technical note, if you guys have problems or if the video gets a little choppy or the sound stops, I think it's my internet connection, but the internet connections all over America are a little bit slow. Can't imagine why. Netflix actually just announced this morning that they're slowing down their speeds to other countries so that they don't eat up so much bandwidth as they're sending all of the internet binging going on.
I can say, I can't believe that it's all, I mean, I really have so much faith in the system. It's amazing that it's all working as well as it is on week 2 now.
Erica, we got Aaron here chiming in. He says, I'm interested in hearing how the current situation, such as cancel hours and SATs and finances due to virus will affect us. You know, it's funny, Erica and I were getting ready for this webinar yesterday. Right as it came across, I sent her an article.
Oh, we might've lost Justin there. He did send me an article, and I have actually, so I mentioned it already once. I have this list of FAQs and resources that I'm gonna send you, and it has links to a whole bunch of news articles and information. So I'm gonna answer your question, Aaron, and I'm gonna answer a couple of questions all at once. So a couple of questions I've gotten a bunch of times in the last week or two are, number one, are schools going to extend their deadlines, which of course they are, and what if I can't take or retake my ACT tests, or what if they've been postponed and it changes the schedule? So as far as schools extending their deadlines, of course, yes, they are extending their deadlines. Things are being delayed, canceled, deadlines are being extended all over the place, and not just admissions deadlines and test deadlines, but also, hang on a second, you guys. Oh dear. All right. I have such a good question to answer and I have a technical deep glitch to deal with. And we've lost Justin. So hang with me, because I'm gonna do it myself. I can do it.
No, I'm here.
Yeah, you're still here.
Yeah, you're.
Cool. Oh, you guys are still here.
Yeah, we're still here.
So Justin, what's
Go on. We can hear you fine. You're broadcasting just fine.
Yeah. Just talk.
I'm going to keep talking. What I'm afraid of is it's telling me that.
That you got about 9 minutes left here.
Yep. And so I've taken care of that in the background. I'm sorry about that, guys, but I didn't want to get cut off. So now we're good.
Look at that, real time upgrading her account there.
I know. Hey, I was in a meeting the other day. I mean, I'm just being real with you guys. We really do roast our own coffee in the backyard. My joke about roasting coffee and drinking it, this is just the real deal, right? So there it is. Okay, so now we've got unlimited minutes, although I hope not to keep you guys all day. Where was I? We're talking about canceled stuff and deadlines, right? We're at Aaron's question. Aaron, it's a good question, and you're a junior also, right? So your question about canceled tours, and I get 3 questions. I mentioned our school is going to extend their deadlines, and what about my tests and the deadlines being changed? But I also get a question about how do we choose a college if we can't visit campuses? And so that's also something to consider as a junior. So many students go on their junior year spring break, which is now, or they go in the summer to visit all the campuses that they might be interested in going to. And of course, we're not doing that right now. So how are we going to know? So Aaron's question is, how is the situation going to affect students who are applying? And I guess it depends a little on where you are in the process, right? The April 4th ACT date has been postponed until June 13th right now. I would expect to see that it gets postponed again, or that other tests get postponed. The May 2nd ACT, or the May 2nd SAT, which is the SAT test, has been canceled altogether. The College Board, which is the organization that puts out the SAT as well as your AP tests and AP or SAT subject tests, they are updating all the time. They're saying on their website, please come back to look for updates to find out how they're working on a way to deliver the SAT at home online, right? And of course you can imagine why this is really problematic, because they have to make sure that they have to make sure that they can guarantee to you, Aaron, that other people didn't cheat, because if they cheated and you were honest, then they have an advantage, right? And so they have an obligation to all of us, to you and to Vanessa and to everybody else, to figure out how to make sure that the test can be administered well. But they're trying to figure it out, and they will figure it out. And so one of the things that I'm really making a point of for all my new juniors clients who are coming in for the class this fall is expect to have options to take this test. Even though it's not clear how that's going to work, it's going to happen. You will have options to take these tests. And even though we don't know how that's going to happen, it's important for you to prepare to be able to take the test, because you'll have an option of some kind, but you might not have 3 options, right? So you want to make sure that you're going to be prepared for the SAT when you show up for that test, because you might not have time to retake it and get a better score. So I think the overall point is you should be preparing for the test. You might not know when you're going to take it, and you might not have a chance to take it 3 times. So take the time where you can be calm and have the presence of mind and prepare for it, and take it when you can. And the other thing that I'm telling students is make sure you sign up for a summer testing date now. If you're not already signed up for the June 13th ACT, for example, go get signed up for it. Sign up for the ACT. If it gets moved, your space is going to be saved, right? So you want to reserve your seat, because if that testing date isn't postponed, it's really likely that it's going to be sold out, right? All the seats will be full. And so you want to make sure that you reserve your seat so you can take your test, because now let's talk about test optional schools. So more than 1,000 colleges and universities in the US have gone test optional over the last couple of years, and not only coronavirus, but for other reasons. And now with coronavirus, we're already seeing other schools who are saying they're going to be test optional this year. Maybe test optional forever. They haven't said so. I heard another counselor say yesterday, schools that go test optional, they never go back because it's much easier for them. It really is better. But even though 1,000 schools are test optional, maybe there will be 2,000 schools test optional. A good test score always helps you, right? So prepare for the test, prepare to be able to take the test, prepare to do as well as you can on the first time you do it. And then prepare to have that score help you and not hurt you in the coming year. So if you're applying this year, or you're applying next year, your score is going to be what it is. It's going to be the best you can do. And keep in mind also, we're all in the same boat. I heard someone say it that way as well. This something that's really true about this situation is that it's happening worldwide. It's happening to everybody. Hurricane Katrina only happened to some people had this special circumstance and others didn't. But right now, we're all experiencing this. We're all stressed. We're all worried about our parents, our grandparents, our neighbors. Everybody who's applying to college, everybody who's thinking about applying to college is going to be experiencing the same kind of hardships that are facing all of us. So institutions, colleges, school districts, everybody, they're going to have to adjust to continue to make going to college possible, right? Their adjustments are going to be made. So expect for the colleges to be making statements about their accommodations and how they're going to adjust things in the coming weeks. It's going to be okay.
Yeah, one note on that, I will say, having some experience in background in government and policy and otherwise, and talking to a few people, I know that there's going to be a lot of great accommodations made for people who are applying for college this year. But 2 notes: don't take this as some type of handicap. Don't tout it as a handicap. Don't fall back on it as some type of detriment to you. Your disposition in this will really tell the story to the people that you're applying. If you can be strong in this element and still get the things in on time, but just know that there's going to be a lot of leeway applied, I believe, for a lot of people here. Okay, Erica, we have the next question from Diana here. Do you think that colleges might look to test scores less harshly because of the coronavirus?
Diana, I'm going to be honest with you. You can't take this to the bank, but yes. Honestly, and I think that's also going to be true about grades. I get a lot of questions, I get a lot of questions, and the question is, what about, insert thing that's really hard now because of this, whatever situation, right? I mean, honestly, students' grades, your grades might slip because of online school. Your grades might slip because life is happening out there and it's crazy. And I've heard a couple times, I've heard of a mom or dad say, but his grades were improving this semester, and now the school district has decided to go pass fail. So now what? So yeah, I do. I think the colleges, they're going to look at this year differently. It is different. It's totally different. And Justin, you just said something so great, which was the temptation. I wasn't going to say this today because I haven't figured out how to say it in a nice way. So I'm just going to spit it out. I've been thinking a lot about essay topics because this is going to be a tough year for all of us, right? And so the temptation for all of us is going to be to say, oh my gosh, this has been so hard because X and Y and Z, and this is, and we're going to be tempted to make excuses for ourselves. And I don't think anybody's going to need to do that. I don't think anybody's going to need to make an excuse for the fact that this is going to be a really hard year, right? And so that's why I go back to point number 1 on the screen right there, which is talk about what matters most. Focus on doing the things, focus on doing the best you can. Focus on knowing where you want to go. Focus on getting clear about, the dot in the middle. And making a plan for that and committing to that plan and doing the best you can and being positive, like honestly, that's what impresses colleges. So you're in charge of the story that you tell. You're also in charge of the story that you live, right? So be in charge of that and tell that story well and do the best job you can.
And think about it, maybe you have a great personal essay to write from this.
Yeah, and
just for technical questions, if you want to enter the chat room, just hit the chat button down below there. Or if you feel like you want to mic in, I can unmute you. You can just ask your question.
Yeah, and before I go on to, I have a couple more questions ready, but I want to go ahead and put the address on the screen here while everyone is still here. Let's see if I move the slide. I offered in my email to set up one-on-one calls with anyone who's here today, no catch, just to talk about your situation. So for example, Diana and Teresa, we can talk more about early decision and the strategy for that and how it might be a little bit different this year. I think that strategy will be a little bit different this year because colleges, honestly, they are going to be struggling too big time. So the economics of colleges of higher education is really interesting. So we can talk about strategy. I'm going to see if I can figure out how to show you guys the next slide. And because it has that address on it. So if you guys go to rockstarstrategysessions.com, I know it sounds so fancy, but go to rockstarstrategysessions.com. I'll take you to this page where you can find a spot on my calendar and we can just get together and talk, just the 2 or 3 of us, about your situation. So I really want to encourage you guys to do this. I mean it. There's not a whole lot I can do in this crazy situation that's happening to all of us, but I can do this. So please schedule time and we'll figure it all out together. So I'm going to leave that up and then let's see. How about if I answer this? This is really a whammy. Okay, so I've gotten this question a couple of times. We already talked about it a little, but how is this going to change the way schools are reviewing applications, right? Or sometimes, a couple of times somebody said, is it going to be easier for me to get in or is it going to be harder for me to get in at a school? So it's kind of like Diana's question, right? So I hate this. The answer to this question is it depends. It's the answer to every question, of course. But higher education, you know, it's in massive turmoil right now, let's be honest, right? And it's not all coronavirus's fault either. So expect aftershocks as a result of what's happening now. And I think also expect for this great big shift to online classes that's happening both at school, at high school level and at the college level. Expect that not to go completely back. And so here's how that changes the way colleges are going to look at applications. Every admissions office on earth is concerned about their enrollment numbers every year. Not just this year, but every year. They set goals in the summertime and they have to meet them. And they're going to have to meet them this year, even with coronavirus. They still have to meet them. They still have to fill the seats. They still have to make tuition revenue. So the flip side of that is, just like you are, probably, other families are also taking a second look at schools that are a little bit closer to home this year, right? They're thinking, somebody said to me the other day, well, you know, I'd rather have, we'll pretend like it's you, Diana. I'd rather have Vanessa out of school closer to home. You know, what if the airports close again? I can get in my car and I can drive over and get her home safely. So families are thinking about that. They're thinking about the school that's closer to home, not just because of safety, but also because of finances, right? A parent called me the other day, not a client, but wanted advice and said, oh my God, we invested our 529 in the stock market and now we can't afford our daughter's dream school. Right? So in addition to not wanting to be across the country, you know, a private school might be more expensive than, you know, finances have changed. So the way this affects how colleges look at applications is that they know that. And they still have to fill their seat and they still need to make offers to students that they think are going to say yes. And so here are a couple things to consider about that. I think colleges are going to be using waitlists more than they have in the past. And I think there will be more names on waitlists. So if you're a senior this year, you're already kind of past this. The seniors are getting ready for, you know, deposit day, which is coming up here. Usually it's coming up at the end of March, and those deadlines have been postponed. But if you're a junior and you're just getting into the application process and you're starting to look at schools like Erin is, and you're trying to figure out where to apply, you know, you may see, Erin says, will we lose financial aid and DVR funding because of government funds being cut? Let me come back to that. It's a good question. Let me come back to that. So you may see, I think we'll see more students' names on wait lists, and I think colleges are going to take students on the wait list more seriously. So if you get a wait list offer, it would be especially important that you make contact with the school right away and tell them you want to be considered on that wait list. Most schools send you a letter and say you're not automatically put on the wait list. You're invited to put your name on the wait list, and you have to reply. So even more than ever before, it's important that you put your name on that wait list, because there's a better chance that that call is going to come, right? And you want all the options you have available. So next thing, Erin said, what about financial aid? Consider negotiating financial aid. So I always tell students and families this. I always tell students that you can negotiate the financial aid offer at a school. You're in a better position to negotiate your financial aid at school number one if you have an offer from school number two. So it's important to apply to schools that you think that will make you a good offer, the strategy there. But think about it this way. So on one hand, this year, with colleges even more concerned about filling their seats, they are going to have an extra incentive, if you will, to make it appealing for you to come to their school. They're asking you to prom just like you are, right? And so they're going to have an extra incentive to sweeten the pot if you're a really desirable student. So you might get more financial aid. But on the other hand, I want to just talk a little bit about some numbers here. So I prepared these numbers. Don't let your eyes glaze over, but I want to give you some numbers, okay? So a college student represents maybe $250,000 a year in economic impact in the community between tuition and what they spend in the town, everything else. It's a lot of money. So consider this thing. everybody's worried about study abroad and how students can't go abroad to study. American students can't go abroad to study. But this coronavirus thing, it also means that students abroad can't come to the US to study. So international students enrolling at American universities represent $9 billion a year in tuition revenue. $9 billion. B goes this way. $9 billion in tuition revenue. Those students can't come next year. Many of them can't. A third of international students, 1/3 of that $9 billion comes from Chinese students coming to the US to study. And those seats are going to be vacant. So that's good for you because it means the seat might be available to you. But also keep in mind that an international student pays almost 300 times the tuition price that an in-state student will pay. So that seat is available, but colleges are really concerned about meeting their revenue goals. And so there's something called need-blind admissions, Erin, and financial aid is often based on need, although it's also based on merit. And there are about 100 schools that do need-blind admissions, which means that they don't look at your ability to pay when they consider whether or not they're making you an admissions offer. There are more than 3,000 schools, colleges, and universities in the US, and only 100 of them say that they're need-blind. And so what that means is the reality is that colleges do consider whether or not and how much you can pay.
Got another good question here for you, Erica.
What you got?
Go ahead and finish your thought there if you had more there.
Actually, let me finish my thought because this is a really big one. This is a really big one, Erin. All of you guys. It's important to appeal to the school if you need to and if you can for the financial aid that you need. Because, and I mean play hardball. Call them up. Say, I really, really want to come to the school. This offer isn't going to make it possible for me. If you can say, I've got a better offer, or not a better offer, I mean, I don't know whether you say it that way. I help families all the time figure out how to say it, by the way. But, you know, if you have another offer from another school and you can send that letter and say, hey, look, my local school has offered this to me, but, you know, I'd really rather come to amazing school X. It's really important that you appeal for that because here's the deal. Either they will meet your offer or your request, or they won't. But if the school cannot make it affordable for you based on those hard thinking that you've done as a family and with your advisors and everything else, if they can't make it affordable for you to go or for your student to go, it's not the right school. So it's really important that you understand what your numbers are, that you understand why it's worth spending the money that you're going to spend, because it is worth it. But it's really important, Erin, Vanessa, you guys are the ones that are borrowing this money most likely. So figure out why it's worth it. Figure out how much it's worth. And then find a school that can do it at that price. And if the school that you're dreaming of can't do it at that price and they can't do it in a way that makes it possible for you, then they're really not the right school. So that's my overall answer to all of it.
All right, next question there, Erica. What do you got there? I'm gonna make sure I got the right setting there.
You've got, I was just thinking that will happen. Teresa says, have you heard anything that schools such as in Texas that have automatic admissions criteria will increase the GPA test score requirements given they may get more apps from people staying close to home? Nothing official. Teresa, you make a really good point. So schools like in Texas, Teresa, you might remember, I grew up in Texas and I went to the University of Texas at Austin for my graduate degree, but the Texas Constitution, Texas Constitution requires that Texas public schools admit no more than 20% out-of-state students. I don't know what the percentage is, but a lot of schools have that, right? So in Texas, 80% or whatever the percent is of students need to be from Texas. So Teresa's question is, given that more students from Texas are going to perhaps apply to schools in Texas, are they going to raise their requirements? I'm thinking. I'm just trying to think about how you phrase the question. It's hard to know. Like I was just saying before, I think schools are really, I used to be I was a college administrator. I've seen on the inside how all of this works, right? There's really complex calculus and algebra that's going on the school side, so that they make offers to students who are most likely to come to their school and most likely to pay tuition at the school. And schools get ranked based on how many students say yes. So they're really concerned that they make offers to students who do say yes, and they're looking for evidence that I know Erin, it's okay. It's okay. And actually, I don't want to, it's really easy for me to get bogged down in the details because I understand them and I know it helps, but I really don't want to get bogged down in the details, because the bottom line for Erin and Vanessa and for all of you guys who are parents is, the bottom line is, I want all of my clients to focus on these things. Focus on this stuff, all of this stuff that's happening in the background and all the ways in which it's going to be different because of coronavirus. It matters a lot, and it matters that you get good advice about navigating it, but it doesn't matter as much as you picking a good match school that is going to be the place where you can get the skills you need to have that better life I talked about at the beginning. And the part where you pick a good school, to pick the right school, pick the good match school, that's not about them, and it's not about their economics and whether or not it's not about whether or not their intrinsic requirements have changed. It really is about whether it's the right place for you, because I've seen it over and over again. I've seen this dozens of times with my own clients. Once we find a school that is so perfect for that student and what they want to do, what they want to learn, we find that match and we figure out how to tell the school, I am a great match for you. The schools, they want that student, they want you. It's beautiful. And so that's the work, Erin, is figure out what you think you're going after. Don't get caught up in the fact that it's going to change. Just figure out what you think you want. Let your parents and your teachers and your advisors and me set up a call with me. Figure out what you think you want. And then
Awesome questions.
Find
awesome
a place
questions.
that's that place.
And the genesis for this webinar is we were sitting around, we know that your kids are sitting around, and the question is, what are you going to be doing with them during this time? So Erica, maybe you can ask, here they are, they got no school, probably at least for the next week or more, maybe longer. We know that certain states are considering canceling the rest of the school year. What can they do now so we can keep them activated? Where do they start on the process of applying for college now? Or what should they do first?
I love it. This is my favorite question. And it's actually the question that Erin's mom, Chris, hi Chris, welcome. It's actually basically the question Chris is asking, although I don't think she realized it. So do you have a suggestion for criteria to narrow to a top 3 or 4 schools to apply to? So yes, I do. In addition to doing traditional college counseling, I have a startup business, and we're working on some really cool, innovative tools. And that means I get to do what they call pitching a lot. And when I pitch, one of the things I say is, American high school students submit 10.8 million college applications a year. The average student applies to between 7 and 10 schools, and almost all of those 10.8 million applications are done at the very last minute by parents and students who have no time to think about the stuff I keep focusing on today. So they're busy, they're overwhelmed, they don't know what they want, and their response is, forgive me, I don't mean to sound flippant, I promise, but their response to, I'm busy and I don't know what I want is, let's just apply to 10 schools and maybe one will be great. So they make all this extra work, but they don't focus more. So Chris, your question is perfect. the response to all this uncertainty isn't to apply to more schools. I think the right response is to apply to fewer schools and make sure they're the right schools. So my criteria, I always start with students. I always start with what their goals are. And that's how we narrow it, right? We start with the end in mind. You heard Jean's amazing radio voice saying, when I work with students, they don't just get into a school. They don't just get into 10 schools. They get into their dream of their future. And so narrow your schools based on what you want to do. Narrow your schools based on what you think is going to work for you. Start with things, I start with some really simple questions that aren't that deep, and that just narrows the field, right? So bigfuture.org is the website at that college board, which is the SAT folks. Bigfuture.org is their college search tool, and it's great, and it's free, and I wish I'd thought of it, but I can't improve much on it. It's a great place to get started. They have a college search feature, and they'll ask you a couple of really simple, non-deep, non-hard questions like, where do you want to live? Now, I don't recommend that you pick colleges based on these first 5 criteria, but if you narrow the field based on these first 5 criteria, then you can take the list that's left over and narrow that list based on the things like, what do you want your life to be like in 5 years? What do you want? What kind of skills do you need for that life, right? So start with, where do you want to live? Do you want to live on the East Coast? Do you want to live on the West Coast? Do you want to live in between? Do you want to live where it's cold? Do you want to live where you can get home in a day in your car? Just make that broad, just narrow it down. So start with that. So if you go to bigfuture.org, hey, Justin, type bigfuture.org there so they can just literally click on that link. If you go to bigfuture.org and you start narrowing down by these really easy things, like where do you want to live is number 1. Number 2 is, what do you want to study? Okay, so I don't mean, do you want to be a mechanical engineer or an aerospace engineer? I mean, are you thinking about liberal arts? Are you thinking about English and literature? We're going to have a talk if you are. Are you thinking about science and math? Are you just so unsure you can't even answer that question, right? And so just start to narrow it that way. Most students have more of an idea about this than they think they do. Erin, do you have a clue? Type it in there, Erin, if you have a clue. Vanessa, I want to know if you have an idea too. So you know if you want to do something that's math and science, or if you want to do something that's journalism and communications, So then narrow it that way. So that's the second one. Small school, big school, liberal arts school, engineering program, biology program. I want to be an accountant. So just pick them, the big buckets, and narrow it based on those things. And then you're going to get a list that's way shorter. Usually I have a list of 3 or 4 questions like that are not deep, they're easy. Vanessa says business, right? So, okay, Vanessa, you should not apply to a tiny liberal arts school that doesn't have a business program. Done. Believe it or not, that'll eliminate about half the schools from the field, right? So then you say, okay, you guys are in Santa Barbara, right? Or environmental science. What a great combination, right? So maybe you want to apply to schools that have business and environmental science programs only. And then next, you want to apply to schools that have good business programs and good environmental science programs. And then the third one after that is you want to apply to schools that you have a chance of getting into, right? So if you have a 27 on the ACT, you don't want to apply to schools that have a minimum ACT of 32. There aren't very many of those, by the way. So
yeah, my other recommendation is that you guys get with Erica. I know for myself, my wife, and our junior, we have a lot of choices, and she walked us through some incredible sort of parent-student sessions, which helped us realize kind of where people are, and it was pretty cool. So again, if you go to rockstarstrategysessions.com, there'll be a link to a calendar. You can schedule a time with her, And there's some really, really incredible stuff that we've been able to work for. And yeah, we're actually working on some automation, some more webinars, some paid stuff that we think will walk you through some really interesting things. But right now we have these free sessions. You can set up a complimentary session because you joined us here in the webinar. And we're kind of excited about that. I know you guys probably have a lot of different questions. Oh, Aaron has one. What if I'm studying sports journalism? There's a lot of different questions. I'm sure we could go down the rabbit hole on that too. I just want to, we're coming up just on 1 hour here, Erica.
Yeah, so I wanted to put my face, I realized I should have put my face back up on the screen minutes ago. But the link to the schedule is in the chat. It's rockstarstrategysessions.com. Please do, because as you can see, the answer is always it depends, even more so now than ever. And what I'd love to do is just talk a little bit about, Aaron and Vanessa have given us great examples. Vanessa, business and environmental science. Aaron says, what if I'm studying sports journalism? And this career requires a lot of traveling. So in a matter of where I want to be in 5 years, he says, I'll be all around the US, right? Aaron, I want to congratulate you, right? Because you're thinking about this the right way. Where do you want to be in 5 years, right? Let's reverse engineer from where you want to be in 5 years. So in 5 years, you want to be starting out as a sports journalist. Well, we don't really know what that's going to look like right now in 5 years, but we do know what kind of skills you're going to need, right? And we do know that we want to get you in a school that has a great journalism program that you can get into, that's in a place where you want to be next year, so that you can get, as we like to say, we can get you all skilled up. And that might mean going to a place that's close to home where you can focus on studying, or it might mean that Chris is gonna help you figure out the place across the country where you're gonna be safe to do it. But the most important thing is getting you to the place where you can get skilled up, as I like to say. That's really actually more important than all the rest of it. But in order for you to pick a place that is going to help you focus on skills, you got to know what the skills are that you want. So you want a school that has a sports journalism program, if at all possible. Not every school has that specific one, but many do. There are a few. So you want to apply to those schools. You're a junior right now, so you're in great shape to, I love to start working with families right now in the second half of their junior year and start figuring out, what do you need in place to get into that school, those schools? What do we need to work on? What's your target score for your SAT that's going to get you into that school? What kind of internship might you be able to do online right now? What kind of writing might you be able to do online in a community that you already belong to, that you can get you some practice? And make contact with the schools. Right. But I'd love to sit down and do a search for sports journalism programs that meet your qualifications and give them a call. Old fashioned, like this. What else have we got? We are running up on 11 o'clock, and I'm really happy to stay and chat. Obviously, I'm chatty, right? So I'll stay and chat with you guys if you want to, but I do want to make sure that you guys have the link to schedule with me, and we'll just chat specifically about your situation, and then I want to give people sort of permission to sign out if they need to. What type of...
Diana has a question here, Erica. She says, what type of undergraduate degrees correspond with the master's law program?
What type of undergraduate degrees correspond with a master's law program? So Diana, you mean, when you say a master's in law, you mean a law degree, a JD, not the... I'm going to assume that...
I think Vanessa is asking what undergrad majors can she study if she wants to go into a master's law afterwards.
Gotcha. Okay, so this is great. You guys are wonderful, because I'm so thrilled that you're asking questions that are just, these are time-tested questions, and I'm glad that you're thinking about this stuff, and it's not all coronavirus stuff, really. These are questions I answer every year. How do you get into a good law school? Here's what I would actually see. Here's what I say to students who are really focused on graduate school. It doesn't matter so much what you major in as you think it matters. The thing that you should be looking at when you are looking for schools, if you have graduate school very much as your target right now, where you think, is go look at the numbers for that school, and these numbers are published. I can help you find them. Go look at the numbers for how graduates from that school do on the LSAT. Bye, Erin and Chris. I can't wait to chat. They say goodbye. These are easy numbers. These are the numbers that you really want to know. You want to know, and I have a set of 3 or 4 numbers that I make all my students do research on. What is their 4-year or 5-year graduation rate? 5-year still counts on time. So how many students graduate on time? That's important because it'll tell you how happy the students are, and it tells you a bunch of other things. They graduate on time, and then schools will publish, not always in the same place, but they'll tell you if they've got and especially if they've got a good track record of getting students into graduate programs, they'll be bragging about it. And you can call the admissions office and ask for it if you can't find it. You say, I want to know how do students do on the LSAT? How do they do on the GMAT, which is the MBA placement? How do they do on the GRE, which is sort of humanities graduate tests? What's the science one? Is there a separate one for science? GMAT is medical, LSAT is law school, GRE is kind of everything else, and then there will be placement tests for science and other kinds of things. So you call the admissions office and say, and this is something else this was the point I kind of wanted to make that I didn't get around to. When I work with students, I have all my students make contact with a real person at the schools that they're considering applying to. Really either by email and preferably by telephone. It's old-fashioned feeling to young people, but it makes a human connection, and it means that you have someone you can call and ask questions to. At a time like this right now, when you can't go visit campus, that person that you make contact with, oh my gosh, that person that you make contact with is even more likely to give you a feel for the school. So Vanessa, you're gonna call that admissions officer and you're gonna say, hey, I'm super interested in Lake Wobegon State, but I really want to go to law school, and I'm wondering, how do students do when they graduate from Lake Wobegon when they apply to law school? How many of them get in? What are their LSAT scores, right? So Erin's gone, but Erin's looking for a journalism program. So a lot of schools will publish placement rates. They don't have to publish placement rates, but Erin could, for example, could call and say, do you publish how many of your graduates get jobs right out of school in their intended field? And that's the way you'd ask it. So you are the consumer. I get in trouble all the time for saying this and talking about education like it's a product. But guys, it is a product. Let's be real. You're buying, they're selling, and you have every right to ask these questions. And you should. I want to go for my bachelor's in English. Richard. Hi, Richard. I want to go for my bachelor's for English and minor in film. Do I think with the chaos of the virus will affect that? Richard, tell me what you mean by affect that. I'm going to try to answer, but I'd like to know more specifically what your concern is, because gosh, I think the chaos of coronavirus is affecting everything. So tell me more. In the meantime, Shelley says, how do you really know what is a good bachelor's program as compared to other comparable programs at other colleges? So Shelley, my answer, bye Teresa. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Be sure and find a time on my calendar. I'd love to follow up. Shelley, all those things that I was just saying are good ways. So it depends on what kind of bachelor's degree. So if you're hoping to get into law school, that one's kind of easy because you can ask for LSAT scores. U.S. News and World Report publishes rankings. They're famous. They've been around forever. They have drawbacks, but they will tell you, to be honest, I'm not really a fan of the U.S. World Report rankings. I think that they sometimes focus on the stuff that's not most important. So actually, I'm gonna take that back. I mean, you can look. It's good to look. What I do, Shelley, is I look at these 3 or 4 numbers. I ask students to do it. You can, maybe that's another link I'll share. You can go and look at the statistics, either collegedata.com, College Express doesn't do it, College Data does, the College Board will share these statistics, but 3 or 4 numbers that I tell them to look for. look for your 4 and 5 year graduation rate, sometimes also called on-time graduation rate. That will tell you how many students start and finish. Look for placement rates and graduate entrance exam test scores. You want to look for net price, even though it doesn't have very much to do with the quality of the education. It is important to everybody. You want to look for, I'm going to put the 5 numbers that I give students in the handout that I send to everybody, because I want to make sure that you guys have the specific terms that you can search for. So some numbers, I think focus on the numbers rather than all the hype. And I'll send them to you. Richard, okay, he wants to know, so Richard, with regards to English and a minor in film, what will this affect hands-on work and going out to work in different fields, and specifically in film? Well, yes. I'm smiling because I got an emphatic yes looking at me from the other side of the camera. Yes, it will affect. To be honest though, Richard, these things are already happening. So again, I could put my slide back up and say again, yeah, everything is going to be different about education going forward. Everything is going to be different about everything going forward. I know Justin disagrees with me, and Justin, you don't have to be quiet on this. You can speak up. I know we don't really know how different and for how long and in what way, but things are going to be different. And yes, hands-on work yes, I do think that social distancing is going to be a thing that exists for a while, off and on. I think it's going to be seasonal every year going forward for a while. So, you know, I've noticed theater companies in my community are moving their theater online, and it's still improv. A local improv troupe is doing improv over, I mean, just like what we're doing now, only it's improv. I have a friend who is in theater and it has asked me to participate, where they're doing collaborative performance online. And, you know, as far as film goes, of course, that's different than it used to be. It's not movie theaters, it's Netflix, it's Amazon Prime. So yeah, it's going to change things, but I think it's only going to change things in the direction they were already changing more rapidly. I think you're asking the right question. And to be honest, that's the kind of question, if you were my client, it's the kind of question I'd have you emailing professors and asking them. And then you get the answer, and based on the answer, that's one of the ways that you choose the department or the program you want to be in.
Yeah, and note that, you know, this is the life you are in. This is the history that you're living right now. There are many people who are going to take this moment and consider something to go into virology, to go into epidemiology, to go into these different fields. But maybe in your field, you can think of an innovation that's going to change your field as far as the type of distance that's needed for the short term here. My personal feeling is this going to blow over a little bit, but the impact is still going to be there. I know I'm looking at, when I go down to the grocery store, people have a lot of rubber gloves. They're probably going to keep those gloves on for the foreseeable future. So just think about different things that you can do that might be an innovative twist. This is something that we did. We got together this week. We weren't planning this webinar, and we just said, we're going to go. And there's children number 3 and 4 back of me, so I may mute and sign off here in a second, but you guys are great.
Yeah, Richard, and we lost Aaron, but we still have Vanessa here. You guys, I know that you guys hear this all the time. We didn't hear it when we were younger, but I know you guys hear all the time, the job that you're going to have in the future doesn't exist today. Well, it doesn't. And thank God for that. Thank God for you guys. What's going to happen is you're going to change it to be the way you want it to be. You're going to change it so that it works in the new worlds. So Richard, I think you have the answer to that question better than we do, even though you don't know you have it. And one of the things I thought about saying here was, what are you going to do with yourself while you're home, right? What are you going to do to yourself while we're all in quarantine, or we're on, you know, whatever they're calling it today, stay at home? And how are we going to all deal with being isolated and being lonely? And solve that problem for us, right? Solve that problem for yourselves. Create communities. Richard, what do you think it will look like? Spend your time making connections and talking to the people that you want to work with, meaning your peers, meaning your classmates at school right now, meaning make contact with communities that are doing film, that are doing theater, and see what they're doing. They're doing all kinds of cool stuff, and it's going to change, and that's how you're going to see where it's changing. And it's your future, as the slide said. The future's coming. It's not going to stop for us. It's going to be the way we make it. And I'm not a huge fan of Tony Robbins, but he did say something in a webinar I watched one time that I've used 100 times since then. I should thank him for it. He's a motivational speaker especially for the students on here. You guys might know Tony Robbins. He's a motivational speaker. He does everything online, by the way. You know, you can go to a big event that has 1,000 people in an auditorium with him. Probably not now, but you could. But really, he does all this stuff online. He records all his talks, and he's talking to people about building lives that they want to have, which is also what I do. And he said, you know, you've got to get real about making it happen the way you want it to happen. You really have to. This is real work. It doesn't just happen on accident to you that you build the skills you need to have the life you want. It doesn't happen on accident. You got to take charge of it. And the way Tony Robbins says it is, he says, oh gosh, maybe it's not Tony Robbins. Maybe it's Brendan Burchard. Well, whoever said it, they say the piano of opportunity is not going to fall out of the sky and hit you on the head. You've got to go out and find it. It isn't just going to fall out of the sky for you. So you got to go do the work and think about how you want it to be. That's probably not the answer you wanted, Richard, but here you go. I think we probably have burned out all the questions.
We're an hour and 15.
Hour and 15. I can't thank you all enough for staying with me. This is really a thrill for me to have people interested in their futures, even in the middle of all this. Diana, Jessica, Richard, Shelley, Fatima. All right, guys, I'm gonna put the slide back up for a second, just so you can see that that address one more time. And I'll send you guys all an email and hope to talk to you soon. You're so very welcome.
Thank you, it was very helpful.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Okay, you guys all stay safe and healthy, and we'll talk soon.
That's it. Bye, thank you.